The balance of the mind. You have to bear in mind that words or language have their limitations, they cannot express or convey all conditions of mind, but you can see for yourself what happens to your mind during the practice. We try to cultivate awareness of our body's movements. To do that we have to keep our minds in balance. If our minds turn outward, that is they are distracted by external conditions or overwhelmed by stimulated thoughts, we cannot have clear awareness. At the same time, if our minds turn too much inward, we are easily tense because we focus too much on trying to stop our thinking. This will not enable us to have clear awareness either. Turning too much outward or inward is not good for us, so we should try to keep our minds in balance, neither carried away by thoughts nor trying to stop thinking. When I was a young monk practicing with Luangpor Teean, I practiced in a small cottage with closed windows and closed door. Luangpor Teean came to see me. He stood outside my cottage and asked me from outside, "Can you see me?" I replied, "I cannot see you." "Why?" he asked. "Because I am in the cottage and you are outside," I replied. Luangpor Teean then asked, "How can you see me?" I replied, "I have to open the door so that I can see you." So, Luangpor Teean asked me to open the door. When I opened the door, he asked me to stand at the threshold and then asked me, "Can you see me?" I said, "Yes." "So, you can see outside of your cottage?" "Yes," I replied. He asked, "Can you see inside your cottage?" I said, "Yes." So, Luangpor Teean emphasized, you should practice like this that you can see both outside and inside, not to practice with the closed mind that you can not see anything but inside yourself. This is not a good practice. You should practice with a mind that can see outside and inside. This is what he taught me. Luangpor Teean's instruction will be fruitful if we do not only reflect it, but try to follow or bring it into practice. If we just speculate on he taught, it is useless. We have to bring it into practice and see for ourselves how it works. The point that Luangpor Teean emphasized is to keep our mind in the middle, not too much outward nor too much inward. The only way to do that is to feel, to stay on the basis of awareness. In order to have clear awareness, we have to keep our minds in balance, neither falling into distractions nor forcing our minds to concentrate, or putting much focus on any one point of the body. To be aware is to see, to notice the heat, to notice the cold, to notice pleasure, to notice pain, to be aware when our minds become high, and also to be aware when our minds become low, not to fall or be overwhelmed by each opposite of our mental states. Just let go of high and low, heat and cold, keep your mind unaffected by them. This is the middle way. This is the path that the Buddha described, the middle way. Those who force the mind to concentrate on the body's movement, or try to stop thinking are what he described as, trying to turn inward. That is, trying to stop thinking, or trying to force the mind to focus on a particular point of the body's movement. It is easy to get physical problems doing that, you may find it difficult to breathe or feel your chest tense. In this situation, it will be more fruitful to turn our minds outward, to our surroundings. For example, for anyone who has such symptoms, or is tense because of an overly inward-oriented mind, I would try to persuade that person to notice his or her surroundings. That is to turn their minds outward so that it will be in balance. In this case, outward orientation or outward attention is useful. It is not bad all the time, it can be useful, if we are to solve the problems of balancing our minds. A few years ago, there was a case in Thailand where a villager, who was very earnest in the practice, took his practice very seriously to the point of where his hands became so stiff, he could not move them. He did not show up for the morning chanting session which started around 4 o'clock, and I did not see him in the dining hall at breakfast time either. I wanted to see what happened, so I went to see him at his cottage after breakfast, and found him sitting with his hands stuck to his abdomen. Once he saw me, he asked for my help. He said that his hands had been stuck like that since 3 o'clock in the morning, and that it had already been 6 hours since he could not move. He said he asked for help, gave blessings to the sentient beings, but it did not help. I know that his mind was turned too far inward. So, I tried to speak with him to push his mind outward, to involve him in outward conversation. I had a conversation with him in order to let his mind out of that situation. I asked him, "How many children do you have?" He replied, 3. So I asked, "Do you miss your children?" He said, "Yes." "How are you planning to help your children when they grow up?" I asked. He started telling me his plan for helping his children. Unconsciously, his hands fell down, and he did not even realize it, still talking, replying to me. A few minutes later, he found that, his hands fell down. It happened because his mind became interested in something outside, his mind became balanced, and the problem of his hands was solved by itself. This is an example of how problems can be solved if we try to keep our minds in balance. So, please take advantage of whatever happens to you, whether it be distraction, tension, or repression. Do not feel it is useless. When you feel distraction, it is useful if you try to learn from it. You can learn a lot from whatever happens to you. So, make the best use of it. Do not feel bad when your mind is carried away by thoughts or feels scattered. It can reflect a lot about yourself and the nature of your mind if you pay attention to it. Take it easy, feel relaxed when you practice. For me, I have no problem sitting or walking for a long time without being tired, because I feel relaxed and I take it easy. Whatever happens to you, do not become fussy or frustrated. When you lose awareness, or when you become stuck in your thoughts or in your thinking process, do not be fussy about it. Just feel that it is all right and then come back to the awareness. With this kind of attitude you will feel comfortable, and will get through any kind of problem. You may face not only tension or frustration, but also drowsiness or anxiety. But if you take it easy with the effort, with the attempt to resist these tendencies, you will overcome all of them. Any questions? Question: You just mentioned that when you reflect you can understand more about yourself, but during the practice, aren't we supposed to not think and just be aware? Answer: Yes, at this time you need not to investigate. Just be aware of it, just see it, that is enough. You will finally understand the thoughts, so you need not investigate. Just being aware of them is enough. I would like to add that once you have a better understanding of yourself and your mind, you should be careful not to fall into the trap of knowledge. Just knowing that you know is enough. If you become excited with your knowledge, it can distract you or obstruct you from being aware of your body. Question: Does the knowledge obstruct because you are thinking too much? Answer: It is a trap. It obstructs the practice because when you know more and more you become fascinated by knowledge. When you know more and more, you tend to follow the flow of the knowledge and then you lose the practice of awareness. There is a possibility that insight will arise within your mind, wisdom, or insight into the nature of body and mind. You will have an understanding about wholesome, unwholesome, sin, and merit. You will understand the three common characteristics: impermanence, suffering, and no self. You will realize that you can be a monk in essence though you are a layperson. Some monks, after practicing and achieving such insight, exclaim that, "This is the first time that I feel as though I am a real monk. Just today I became a monk." Despite the fact that they had been ordained for many years, they felt that they were not monks until then. Question: Someone else suggested that, and I have tried it a couple times. After you practice a long time, you feel very well and calm. That is a good time to think about what you want to do in the future, because your mind is very clear at that point. Answer: there is no problem if you know when to finish. There are some artists who use meditation to calm the mind in order to paint. But I would like to say that meditation is not only for work, or solving practical problems. You should aim beyond that, to remove suffering. We should use meditation for a higher purpose than solving the practical problems of daily life. Just keep this in mind so that we can make the most of it. Do not try to achieve anything. Do not try to achieve supernatural powers, or want to be better than other people, to compete with other people, or to have a special mystical power. Do not have such an attitude or it will obstruct the practice. I would like to give another example. One monk in Thailand had achieved a lot before his entrance to the monkhood. He was a member of parliament, he had achieved everything he wanted to achieve. So his mind was achievement-oriented, and when he became a monk, he still had this attitude. When he practiced, he tried to achieve spiritual power, he tried to attain insight, the higher wisdom. He drove himself to practice a lot until his mind became out of balance. When he met me, he asked me, "Do you see that my robe is full of lotus? I am not an ordinary monk now." I took this monk out of the temple and tried to help him become normal. I took him to see the flowers, the trees, talked to him and made him forget the practice for a while, so that he became relaxed and felt better. But do not worry that you will be like him. I can assure you that I will take you to the right path. If you stay firm in your awareness and don't expect anything more than awareness, you will be all right. Question: was he practicing with Luangpor or with someone else? Answer: with another master, he was just visiting the temple. After a brief chat, I knew that the monk had a problem. Question: it is interesting that this monk would trust Luangpor. If they do not trust, the problem cannot be solved. Answer: it has nothing to do with trust. Because if we have the means to solve the problem, we just talk with him personally, and if we know how to help him get out of the trap that he is falling into, then we can help. In fact, this problem can be solved by itself, but it takes time, probably 10 days if nobody helped him. Question: I think maybe I am too inward in my practice, because when he told his interesting story I realized that all the tension in my back was leaving. After I went outward and listened to his story, I started to forget all about the pain. I still have a congested head, but I can see now that my back tension is releasing. Answer: it is okay. Whatever happens, do not be worried. You should learn how to solve the problem yourself. For example, when you become tense, try to look outward, see your surroundings and pay attention to them. This will help balance your mind. Question: I have noticed that when I go outside to walk around the pond, I feel more relaxed than I do in here. When I work in here, I feel more tense. When I work out there, it feels lighter to me. Answer: do not worry about whether your practice is right or wrong, do not try to achieve the right practice, just keep your mind relaxed and feel comfortable, going beyond anxiety or desire. Question: Luangpor mentioned earlier that hindrances can be helpful, so sleepiness or things like that can be helpful, we just need to resist them. I am just thinking, for example, that today I feel drowsy, and I have been staying with it. I am just thinking that maybe it is helpful sometimes to just go take a nap. When you wake up you feel refreshed, then you can practice better instead of trying to stay with it for a long time. Answer: if your body needs rest or feels physically tired, taking a nap is alright. Even the Buddha suggested you do that if your body needs it. But we should not take a nap on every occasion, just special occasions. If you take a nap every time you feel drowsy, you will not go anywhere. Question: in Sati meditation, we use our body's movement as the object of meditation. While doing the practice, there are other sensations of the body taking place, such as the stomach growling, legs going numb or coughing, etc. Where do we place awareness? Answer: when you cough, do it mindfully. When you feel tense or when you feel tired or have physical pain, sometimes it is not good to resist it. You have to reduce that pain by changing your position from sitting to walking, etc. You have to learn how to reduce this kind of suffering. It also depends on the case. For example, when you feel pain at your neck, you are aware of it, but you should not concentrate on or pay attention to it. You should just continue the awareness of your hands movement. But if you feel tired and your body needs to relax, then you should change postures, or if you have gas in your stomach, the gas should be released mindfully. Question: can you define mindfully, please? Answer: you are aware of it. Mindfulness and awareness are interchangeable. Practically speaking, they are the same, concomitant, twins. So, to be mindful is to be aware of that particular thing. Question: but when you talk about awareness, you are talking about your senses, right? What you feel, what you taste, what you hear, what you see, that is all part of awareness, right? Answer: yes. Knowing what you see and what you hear is awareness. But for the practice, you just pay attention to the object of meditation, like the body's movement. Once, while I was practicing sitting meditation, a big snake moved towards me and it seemed to me that it did not realize that I was in front of it. So, I tried to stop it and make it aware that there was a person in front of it. I threw a matchbox in front of it, and it raised its head once it realized that there was something in front of it. Once I knew it was a cobra, I tried to protect myself without fear, without nervousness or anxiety. Since at that moment, I knew I should not move hastily, I did it mindfully, grasping my robe to protect myself. I prevented the cobra from biting me. June 9, 1997. The Threefold Training. We have to study ourselves to gain a better understanding of ourselves, otherwise, we will become the victim of suffering. Suffering will become our master, and control our minds. If we know ourselves, we become our own masters and can live our lives accordingly. Within ourselves, there is both heaven and hell, merit and evil. Our mind can be the source of happiness or the source of suffering. Pleasure and pain are inside ourselves, as are all states of mind. If we know ourselves better, we will learn how to make our lives happy and free from suffering. There is no better way to understand ourselves, to work and see ourselves internally, than practicing meditation. But normally people are not much interested in meditation. Buddhadasa, a great monk in Thailand who passed away recently, once said that people tend to respect monks, but they never listen to them or put their teachings into practice. Mindfulness meditation is the shortcut to the heart of the nature of our minds and bodies. It will lead us straight to the core of reality, that is the body and mind. There is no way for us to gain a better understanding about mind than mindfulness meditation. Mindfulness helps us attain wisdom or insight into body and mind. It helps us to be clear and remove any doubts we may have about ourselves. During the practice, you may ask yourself, what am I doing? Why did I come here? What is the purpose of meditation? Will it work for me? Or you may ask yourself, is there heaven or hell? These are all questions that I asked myself 30 years ago when I was still a layman. When I met Luangpor Teean, my master, he persuaded me to practice with him. He said that, all of these questions will be answered if you practice with me. What we are doing here is trying to follow the path of the Buddha. The Buddha once said that all of us are subject to suffering. We have suffering in front of us. It has penetrated into the deepest core of our existence. Suffering dominates our lives, so we should be aware of it and try to find the way out of it. We come here to practice meditation in order to get rid of suffering. This method of practice enables us to see the reality of body and mind, to see how suffering is created. It is created from our attachments to body and mind. We are attached to anger or the many kinds of emotions, despite the fact that there is no real self in those emotions. That state of mind has no substantial reality. But we still cling to it, which leads to suffering. Mindfulness enables us to see clearly that our attachments create suffering and misery. It helps us see the body as it is, a combination of various factors. The fundamental elements that comprise the body are earth, fire, water, and wind. We can see clearly how these four fundamental elements make up the body. We can see clearly that the body is not self. There is no self in the body. It is just the combination of these four fundamental elements. Meditation will also enable us to see the nature and conditions of the body. All questions about the body will be solved, and we will not have any questions anymore about it. The same goes for the mind. We will understand the mind with mindfulness. There are thousands of different mental activities of the mind mentioned in the Tripitaka, or the Buddhist canon. These can be understood by us, if our mindfulness is developed enough. During your practice, a lot of thoughts arise in your mind and you may often be disturbed by them. Once you know yourself clearly, you will see that suffering is caused by your attachment to thoughts and emotions. When we hear a noise, we react to it, we are attached to it, and we make judgments about it. The noise is good, the noise is bad. Whatever we see, whatever we have contact with, we always react to it and make judgments, good or bad, pleasure or displeasure, satisfactory or dissatisfactory. We are not aware that we should not be attached to these objects because they have no self. It is just a thought, not the self, and we should not make it personal. There is no person in that thought, but because of our ignorance, we grasp it and take it to be a person or make it personal by attaching ourselves to it. Mindfulness meditation helps us to see, to go beyond convention. Conventions are not the ultimate reality. They are what we assume them to be. You assume that this is good, that this is bad. I am the monk, you are the layperson, this is Guanyin Bodhisattva, etc. We are attached to convention and this makes us suffer. If we see the ultimate reality, we will see and understand that convention is just what we agree upon together. With this insight, with this understanding of conventional reality, suffering has no basis of existence. Suffering exists because we are attached to conventional reality. Once we have insight into conventional reality, and understand that it is not the ultimate reality, suffering cannot be sustained. This is the ultimate insight that we can attain if we develop enough mindfulness. The practice covers the whole aspects of the training according to Buddhism. According to Buddhism, there are three aspects of the training we call the threefold training: training in higher morality, training in higher concentration, and training in higher wisdom. When you practice and develop awareness, the awareness will keep you moral, because if you have awareness, you will not be inclined or tempted to conduct evil. Awareness will enable you to be calm and have a peaceful mind. And, obviously, awareness will bring you to wisdom, to have insight into the nature of reality. You can see that whatever object we have contact with, there is no real self, no independent or substantial self that we can attach to. This will enable us to see reality as it is, to see how impermanent it is, to see how suffering it is, to see that there is not a self that we can attach ourselves to. Everything will be seen under this framework as being impermanent, suffering, and no self. We see what is subject to impermanence, what is subject to suffering, what is subject to no self. We let it be as it is. We are not attached to it. These are the insights that we can gain from the practice. With the insights I mentioned to you, our lives will not be harmful to either other people or to ourselves, because there will be no base for hatred, greed, or delusion to exist. We know that there is no permanent self for us to attach to, so we will feel free, we will feel independent because we have nothing to be worried about. I can assure you that this practice is the way to the noble path, to a noble being, to a noble life. It will lead to the truth that can be shared by everybody, realized by everybody. It cannot be deceived or distorted because it is already inherent in all of us. There is a saying in Thailand that morality will bring us happiness, a peaceful life, and enlightenment. The morality that I mentioned can be achieved by being mindful, by cultivating mindfulness, and it can be assured by the practice that I suggest and instruct you in. Anyway, what I teach is from experience. What I say now may repeat what I said before. It may not flow vertically or continuously, but it is the experience that comes from my heart and can be shared by anybody who practices. Enlightenment means there is no self to suffer, the self vanishes, so there is no base for suffering to exist. We do not need to act out of desire for enlightenment. We just practice, simply practice, and realization will come to us naturally because we carry out our actions. We make the cause and the outcome will take place independent of our desire. Enlightenment has to take place because we have created its cause. According to the law of causality, once we do this, that will happen whether you like it or not. So, you just practice. Action is called karma. If you do it this way, it will lead to the result which is independent of our desires. It just happens. Enlightenment that is not experienced by us is just convention, just a concept, even if you call it by other names, no suffering or freedom. Anyway, the point is that we just try to reach the state of no self where there is no suffering. If there is self, suffering can happen. If there is no self, suffering cannot be sustained. It is not desire because enlightenment is already in ourselves, hell and heaven are already in ourselves, everything is in ourselves including enlightenment and the path. So it is not something out there to be desired or grasped. You need not think about it. You can realize it if you practice enough. For example, does anger last? No. Have you ever acted out of anger? Yes. When you get angry and you fight back, anger fades away and is replaced by sympathy or guilt. So, you can see that anger has vanished and was transformed into other kinds of emotions. The same also applies to suffering. In fact, it does not last long unless we attach ourselves to it. If we are not attached to suffering, it will dissipate. This can happen if we have insight. Whatever we encounter, we will understand that it is impermanent, unsatisfactory, and no self. We will discard it easily without attaching to it. We let it go like garbage. There are many kinds of garbage: paper, plastic, recyclable or non-recyclable. We throw the garbage out according to its category. The same applies to whatever experiences we have. Once we make contact with any kind of object, we let it go. We discard it according to its nature: this is impermanent, this is suffering, or this is no self. All experiences can be perceived into three characteristics, and we just let them go according to their nature. If we live our lives this way, our lives become holy, pure, clean, and free from defilement. It is as if nothing can make us impure. This holy life will make everyone a monk. Everybody here can be a monk. It is a state of mind, a state of pure holy life. In the Buddha's time, there were many established lay people that could be called monks or a noble one, because they were free from suffering. All teachings of the Buddha are centered on these three: impermanent, unsatisfactory, and no self. In the first sermon of the Buddha, he asked the 5 ascetics who would become the first group of noble beings, "Is there anything permanent?" They replied, "No, everything is impermanent." Buddha asked, "What is impermanent is suffering, isn't it?" They replied, "Yes, what is impermanent is suffering, or the causes of suffering." So, whatever is subject to suffering is without self, isn't it? He asked. "Yes," they replied. So, once the 5 ascetics understood that everything is no self, they were enlightened. So, this is the key teaching of the Buddha, the 3 common characteristics. Very few people teach this doctrine. It was fortunate for me that Luangpor Teean taught me about this reality. Cyclic existence is in the present moment, it happens in this life, it is not the bardo or the next life. Our present life is governed by the cyclic existence. Take the smoker for instance. The cyclic existence is composed of 3 factors: defilement, action or conduct, and consequence or result. The smoker has a desire to smoke, and once they smoke there is addiction, and addiction leads to desire to smoke more, and it becomes a cycle: desire, smoke, addiction, desire, smoke, addiction. This is the cyclic existence. This cycle can be broken if the smoker rejects or abandons this habit. No smoke, no addiction, no desire. This finally leads to enlightenment. Once the cycle is broken, nibbana can be realized. Because there is no desire, no action arises. Once there is no action, no desire, and no addiction take place, everything becomes normal, becomes cool. Nibbana is the state of coolness. June 10, 1997. Seeing the mind. We are now following in the footsteps of the Buddha. What we are doing now is practicing what the Buddha instructed us in, that is training ourselves to be aware of body, feeling, thoughts, and mind objects. But we should learn how to do it properly, otherwise we may suffer because of the feelings, thoughts, or mind objects that arise. Our practice may be delayed or obstructed by a lot of things, such as thoughts. In fact, what we should do is just be aware of them, but sometimes we act upon them, and thus another kind of thoughts arises. It is a kind of dual or two layers of thoughts. We act upon creating more thoughts. It is not the primary thoughts that create suffering for us, but the secondary thoughts. This reaction or response to thoughts makes us unhappy and will delay our practice. So, please avoid reacting to thoughts, just be aware of them, and then let them go. In Thai, meditation practice is called Hapathibat. Hapatha means to return. What we are doing now is returning, bringing our minds back home. We tend to be driven by emotions, thoughts, feelings, and elemental conditions. They drive our minds away from home. So, we have to bring our minds back home. This means we have to resist, to go against the stream of habit, go against the stream of thoughts or emotions. Normally, we tend to follow our thoughts, but now we try to resist them, to go against habit, and return to awareness. Awareness is our home. We have to turn our minds back to awareness, to bring our minds back home. Awareness is the point of reference. It is like a pillar that we have to grasp firmly, in order to return and not be driven by any kind of mental conditions. Mindfulness meditation covers two kinds of meditation, namely, calmness meditation and insight meditation. The point is to be aware of the body and to be aware of the mind, to be aware of feelings, thoughts, and mind objects. It does not mean that you have to stop your thoughts, just see them, simply know them. When you think or when thoughts arise, just be aware of them, whenever thoughts arise, just be aware of them, no matter how often they arise. It does not matter if you have a lot of thoughts, but the point is that once one arises you are aware of it. If you have 100 thoughts, you should be aware of all 100 of them. It is not how rarely or how frequently you think, but how often you can be aware. This is what we call self-awareness, to be aware of our own thoughts. This is what Luangpor Teean emphasized. Do not be worried if you have a lot of thoughts. What you should do is be aware of whatever or whenever thoughts arise, that is all. That is the practice. If we want to attain calmness or peace, we may try to stop our thoughts or stop the thinking process. This will lead us to the calmness meditation. It will bring us only calmness and peace to our mind. This practice is like putting a stone on top of grass. The grass cannot grow. But once you move the stone, the grass will grow again. So, this kind of calmness meditation is beneficial only when you practice it. When you stop practicing it, your mind will be the same as before. So, we are not going to do that. What we are going to do is not to stop thinking but to be aware of it, to be familiar with our thoughts. The more we are aware of our thoughts, the more we are familiar with them. We will be so familiar with them that we can point our finger at them, and tell them that we will not be their victims again. We will not follow them again. This is what we are trying to do, to understand our thoughts clearly and directly, knowing that they are only the concocted or compounded beings that deceive us. But once we know this clearly, they cannot deceive us anymore, and we become their masters. We will understand that thoughts are not self, they are just the result of the concocting mind. Many practitioners or meditators may at one point be overwhelmed by various kinds of thoughts. It is like an army of thoughts is bombarding your mind. You may encounter this experience. You may feel bad, but if you keep being aware of whatever thoughts that arise, at a certain point you will suddenly become face to face with the thought. You will see clearly that it is not self, that it is not yours. The thought is there, but we do not make it personal anymore. It is not me and mine, it is not my thought, the thought is not me, it is out there, and we are not going to identify with it anymore. At that point, the thought will have no foundation to stand on to exist. It will vanish, it will dissolve. All thoughts will be dissolved instantly. This is what I call victory of the practitioner. I experienced this kind of victory, and there is nothing else except this kind of victory. I cannot explain more than this, but to ask you not to be discouraged by being bombarded by a lot of thoughts. Keep firm, stay with the awareness, with the knowingness, and then you may be able to overcome it. If you follow my instruction and are aware of body, mind, feeling, and mind objects, all of you will go straight to the target, to the end. So, keep knowing these four aspects of reality. You will gradually understand the nature of these realities, and you will be able to realize that once you hear a sound, it is just a sound you hear. Once you see a form or an object, you just see it, no more than that. So, the body, feeling, mind, or mind objects will not be able to trap you. You will not be subjected to their influence anymore, and you will be able to see these four aspects, these four kinds of realities, the way they are. There is no more than that. Take feeling, for example. If you are not aware of it, once one arises, it will not be just a feeling. It will be more than that. You will judge this feeling. Is it good? Is it bad? A lot of convention, a lot of values will come into play because you are not aware of the feelings. This is good, this is bad, this is desirable, this is undesirable. So, many kinds of values and judgments come into play, and there will be no end. The same is true of mind or thoughts. If you are not aware of them, you become judgmental and will go on and on, endlessly. So, just be aware of them and they will be finished, it will be ended. Feeling will be just feeling, emotions will be just emotions, and mind objects will just be mind objects, and no more than that if you are aware of them. So stay firm, stay only with awareness, and do not push yourself too hard. Just feel free and do not be worried. If you cannot do it, if you cannot be aware of it, that is okay. Do not feel bad for yourself, do not feel regret, oh, I made a mistake. No, just forget it, just go ahead with your practice. Eventually you will realize the truth through awareness. With awareness the truth will reveal itself. The truth of feeling, the truth of mind, the truth of mind objects, and the truth of body will reveal themselves without your memorizing from texts. These truths cannot be memorized, but it is in your capacity to realize them. From my personal interview, all of you have already experienced what is in yourselves. You did not experience something in your imagination. What you explained to me during the past few days is what you have experienced. It is inside yourselves, it is useful. Do not discard it. If you know how to see it properly, it may not be mindfulness that you wish for, but it is still useful for you to use it, for you to understand it. So, just try to learn from it, and it will give you insight or wisdom. What we have experienced so far is not beyond the realm of body and mind. This is the physical body, and feelings, thoughts, and mind objects are in the realm of the mind. So you did not experience something out there. It is already in your body and mind. Try to make use of it skillfully. Luangpor Teean told me that the training of the mind is to see the mind, to look into it, not to seek for calmness of mind. Just see it, just be aware of it, and you will have proper mental training. Since your experience is not beyond body and mind, you do not experience something out there. You experience what is already in yourselves. So, just feel free, feel relaxed and know that you have done nothing wrong. But if you see the image of hell or heaven out there, if you smell odor out there, if you see a vision of angels or a deity out there, you are traversing the wrong path. Please come back. Just try to see, be aware of what is already in your body and mind. That is all. Do not look beyond that. What you have already done may be called meditation, observing the precepts, or earning merit. The meditation you practiced has already covered what I just mentioned. When you practice meditation here, your mind becomes normal, that is sila, or morality. It means normal, normal in conduct, normal in deeds. If you feel calm and peaceful, that is wholesomeness, or husala. If you know how to be free from your thoughts, that is wisdom. Even if you suffer because of them, as long as you learn from them, you have gained wisdom. It is knowledge. It is not necessarily negative. When you practice, you do not do anything harmful to yourself nor to anybody, which means you have already kept the precepts, observed morality. So, morality, concentration, wisdom, wholesomeness or merit, have already been developed from your practice. Please learn how to transform undesirable thoughts, and whatever suffering you may experience. Do not let thoughts make you suffer. Try to adjust your mind, try to change it to be wholesome and happy. You have to learn by yourself to solve your own problems, and if you keep solving your problems, you will have what we call wisdom. You will learn that you are your own master, you will know that your own self is your refuge, and this is the ultimate truth that everybody should understand. There is no refuge other than oneself. Any questions? Question: whenever there is a thought, you suffer because you develop more thoughts. Thoughts that stem from intentional thoughts are okay, I think. For example, if during the practice, you have a thought and know that you cannot improve yourself based on it, then you come up with something of how you want to improve it. Answer: yes, if it is a skillful thought, it will lead to wisdom. We should learn from thoughts without suppressing them, that is what we call wisdom or insight. Wisdom can be obtained when body and mind are free of disturbance. Now, we are already here, and our bodies are far away from annoyance or disturbance. If our minds still think about this and that all the time, about sensual pleasure, about sensual happiness, the Buddha compared this situation to a log that is on the shore but is still wet. You cannot make fire with this wood. But if you are here, your body is in a place of solitude, and your mind is also calm and not engaged in sensual pleasure or distraction, you are like wood that has already dried and can be lit. This means that one will be able to be liberated because body and mind go together. The person who does not practice will keep thinking about the experiences of the past. But if we practice, our minds will be in order, they will keep knowing the present moment. And this mental attitude of knowing oneself, or knowing one's thoughts, will give the wisdom that the mind itself reveals, the truth that is manifested in mind. So, such practice will give rise to the wisdom that the Buddha suggested and praised. We are able to develop or attain a state of wholesomeness in the same manner that the Buddha did. We are able to abandon the unwholesomeness and the suffering that the Buddha was able to. What the Buddha attained is not something beyond our capacity. We can also achieve his compassion, his wisdom, and his purity. So, do not think that the Buddha's qualities are something out there. It is already in our capacity to develop them if we practice constantly. If we practice hard enough, his compassion, his wisdom, and his purity will be shared by us. Mindfulness meditation leads everybody to the same goal, just like Route 301 led everybody here. Anybody who practices mindfulness meditation will realize the same thing, the same wisdom. It does not mean that the Buddha knows one way, and the noble beings know something different. They know the same thing because they use the same road. Mindfulness meditation is the most important road to liberation. What we have practiced now is not a waste of time. Even though you have not attained wisdom yet, what you have done will produce results. You are going to create a karma, or conduct, that produces results. For example, when you raise your hand you become aware of it, such awareness will not vanish. It will accumulate and it will enable you to attain something. So, keep practicing even if you do not gain insight during this 7-day retreat. That is okay, just never mind. Please continue your practice after the retreat, and it will certainly produce results. Question: could anyone reach liberation during this lifetime? Does it depend on the amount of effort you put in the practice? Is it hindered by the sankhara that you have accumulated? Answer: yes. It is possible for a person to achieve liberation, if one practices the Dhamma or the teaching that the Buddha suggested. That is to develop or train in a higher morality, in higher concentration, and in higher wisdom. We are capable of reaching that point. It is not necessarily obstructed or hindered by past actions. If we practice in the present life, we are able to liberate ourselves. I would like to ask you, is there tomorrow? The teaching of the Buddha is full of marvelous characteristics. It is what the Buddha practiced by himself, and it is beyond time. It can produce results beyond the limitations of time. It is what one can realize by oneself, and it can be achieved by anybody with no limitation, and only the practitioner will realize it. You cannot practice it for other people. This is what the Buddha said. There is tomorrow, but we do not know what the chances are for tomorrow, and we cannot do anything about tomorrow. What we can do is today. The past, or yesterday, is already gone and we cannot do anything for the past. What we did in the past is already in the past, we cannot do anything else now. So only today can we do something. Please try to make an effort to improve today. Do not pay much attention to tomorrow or to yesterday. Question: can we teach what we have learned to other people? Answer: we teach and we share what we already have. If we are compassionate enough, we teach compassion. If we are kind enough, we teach kindness. So you share what you have already attained or teach it to other people. There are many things that we may not have achieved yet, but we are able to do that. For example, we may not have read a book but we can still give it to other people. It is like food that we do not eat but share with other people. We do not benefit from it, but we can give the benefit to other people. We just try to help as much as we can. If we find children in trouble, we should try to help them as much as we can. There are many levels of Dhamma. If you live your life according to the moral precepts, you do not harm anybody, you do not kill, you observe the 5 precepts, you have already attained some level of Dhamma. So you can teach if you behave properly. But for the higher levels of Dhamma, one has to attain some level of insight in order to teach other people, but in reality nobody can teach anyone, we can only teach ourselves. Question: I have a question on seeing thoughts. Over the years, I have been practicing, worrying over the quality of thoughts. Thoughts can be strong and there may be many thoughts coming. I am wondering, if, over time, as I keep practicing, will the nature of my thoughts change so they are not as strong, not as quick, or will you just see the thoughts and they will improve? Answer: yes. The unintentional thoughts or undesirable thoughts that cause suffering will change. Their nature will change if you keep looking at them, and at the same time you may be more adept at looking and seeing. Your capacity to look and the nature of thoughts will both change, and your unintentional thoughts will improve. Everything is subject to change, even hatred, greed, and delusion will change if there are sufficient factors to produce the change. It is the law of nature that everything is subject to change, because everything depends on various factors. Luangpor Teean once made an analogy of the state of enlightened mind. An enlightened mind will not hold on to or attach to sensual pleasure, or anything that causes suffering. You just let it pass, let go of it. But if you are an ordinary person, you just grasp this greed, hatred, or sensual pleasure. Even if this is the anger which causes suffering, we still grasp it, and we enjoy it, enjoy getting angry. So, this is the mind of general people who never practice, they cling to happiness and suffering. People do not turn away from suffering, they cling to it and do not let it go. I ran a summer camp. The small novices had a quarrel and wanted to fight with each other. I tried to keep them from kicking and striking each other, but they still wanted to punch each other. They wanted to preserve the anger, they clung to it and would not let it go. So, this is the state of ordinary minds, of ordinary people. When the eyes of the enlightened one make contact with a form, a visual object, to see is just to see, there is no clinging to the form or to the visual object, it just falls down and suffering cannot exist. There is no attachment to the eyes or to the mind. But for ordinary minds, once the contact has been made, they cling to the noise, to the object, and cannot let them go. In fact, Luangpor Teean compares it to clay. If you throw it at a wall and it sticks, it is like an ordinary mind, you cannot let it go. You just think about it over and over, and you become happy or suffer. But for the enlightened mind, it is like dried soil, you throw it and it never sticks to the wall but just falls down. You just see it but nothing happens. Question: is appreciation of beauty a judgment? Answer: that this is beautiful or this is ugly is just convention. The mind of the enlightened one is like the leaf of the lotus that cannot be stained by water, not even a drop. The enlightened beings live in the world but cannot be stained or polluted by the world. They do not cling to the world. They are beyond the world, but they live in the world. The lotus grows out of the dirty mud, but it will never be polluted or stained by the mud. It is very beautiful. This is the mind of the enlightened one. Question: why is happiness a suffering? Is it because it is unstable? Answer: if it is general happiness, it is suffering because it is subject to change. It is just convention. But supreme happiness, liberation, or enlightenment, is different. No happiness is greater than enlightenment. June 12, 1997. Foundations of Mindfulness. Please pay attention. We have been following the instructions that the Buddha gave in the sutta called Satipatthana, or the sutta about the four foundations of mindfulness, which covers all human activities. Human lives or human ways of conduct can be divided into four: the realm of body, the realm of feeling, the realm of thought, and the realm of mind objects. There are a lot of details concerning these four aspects of a human being. Our bodies have experienced a lot of things, we have felt a lot of feelings, encountered various kinds of thoughts, and faced a lot of mind objects or mental impressions. No matter what happens to the body or to the physical form, with mindfulness we can understand the fundamental truth, or the fundamental nature that underlies the activities of the body. Mindfulness gives us insight into the nature of the body. The underlying nature, the fundamental law, that governs the physical realm is what we call the three common characteristics: impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and no self. Feelings are also subject to the three common characteristics. Every kind of feeling, whether it results from contact with the eyes, with the ears, with the nose, with the tongue, with body, or with mind, is subject to these three common characteristics. Ultimately, feelings have no self. We cannot take them to be a self or a person. If we do not understand the reality of feelings, we will be their slave. We will try to struggle for the pleasant feelings, we will try our best to protect whatever can give us pleasant feelings. A lot of people are busy possessing objects that provide them with pleasant feelings, but they will ultimately find that they cannot keep them all the time. They are subject to change, to vanish. The Buddha always stresses that a feeling is not self, it is not the person, it is not the individual, so do not take it to be a person or self. Worldly beings who do not practice cannot understand what the Buddha said, but we will be able to understand if we practice hard enough. During the past few days we have been here, We may not have attained this insight yet, but it is within our capacity to see, to understand, and to have insight into the nature of feelings. We should understand mind or mental formations too. Thoughts, or mental impressions, are very important because if we are not aware of our thoughts, they will give rise to anger, hatred, and delusion. They will give rise to pleasure, pain, sorrow, happiness, and a lot of conventions. Law, rules, regulations, and all sorts of things will come into play, and your thoughts will proliferate without end. Thus we should learn to understand the thinking process. Can we see thoughts? Can we know the thoughts that arise in our minds? Do we follow the thoughts, or do we just know them, just be aware of them? Do we suffer because of thoughts, or do they make us happy? Can we see how thoughts are not self? Are we able to see them as void or empty of self? If we understand and see the thoughts that arise in our minds, thoughts are no big deal. We will become their master. But if we do not know the thoughts in our minds, they will control our lives, they will be our masters. To practice mindfulness meditation, we start by cultivating awareness of our bodies. We start at this point and then we become aware of feelings. Once we are confident enough to be aware of body and feelings, we will then go to the next step of being aware of our thoughts. We cannot jump directly to awareness of our thoughts, because we need to be skillful enough or it will cause us trouble. Our mindfulness should be cultivated, and it has to start from an awareness of the body and our feelings. Once our mindfulness is developed enough, we will proceed further to train ourselves to be aware of our minds. We have to know the former step thoroughly first. If we ignore the awareness of the body, and jump to the step of mental awareness, we will become easily lost in our thoughts. To handle our thoughts and mental impressions, we need to know their weak points. It is as thought we are going to handle a snake. Snakes are harmful, but the skillful person who knows their weak point can capture them without getting hurt. It is like handling an elephant. Elephants are very big and strong, much stronger than human beings, but if we know their weak point, we can capture and harness them. Whatever strength it has, however powerful it is, it does not matter because we know how to handle it. The same goes for our relationship with our minds and our thoughts. We have to know the weak point of our thoughts, then we will understand and will be able to handle them. We should know what their source is and how they are conditioned. With this knowledge, thoughts will not be harmful anymore. Keep knowing your body and mind. Stay only with the knowing, and do not do other than this. Stay firmly with knowing, and knowingness will bring about a change to your mind. We need not do anything to the mind or even the thoughts, but just pay attention to our awareness, the knowingness. Luangpor Teean compared unintentional thoughts to a rat and mindfulness to a cat. For ordinary people, the rat is very big while mindfulness is very small, the cat is very small. If you want the cat to get rid of the rat, you have to feed the cat properly, so that it will grow bigger and bigger until it can catch the rat. So what is the food for the cat, or mindfulness? We have to feed mindfulness with endurance, with diligence, and with constant effort to cultivate our mindfulness. They will develop our mindfulness, and mindfulness will do its duty on its own, handling, replacing, or removing the thoughts from our minds. We do not need to do anything with the thoughts. Just allow your mindfulness to grow and mindfulness will do its job. So, try to be firm on this principle. Does it sound difficult? Now let's talk about the fourth category, mind objects. There are two kinds of mind objects. One belongs to the realm of wholesomeness, and the other, unwholesomeness. Wholesomeness will enable us to be skillful, to be wise, and to be intelligent. It keeps our minds normal, stable, and unmoved by pleasure or pain. The unwholesomeness mind object, the second kind of mind object, always brings trouble to us. It creates a lot of suffering, and it turns one's mind to hell, to be animal-like, or to be a ghost. So, this is what we should be aware of. If we understand these four aspects of reality, body, feeling, thoughts, and mind objects, we have already covered all aspects of a human being, and our study is completed. So try to be familiar with these four realms of our lives, and learn to cultivate awareness of body and mind, of thought and of mind objects. Once we finish such study, our minds will become the noble life, the life that is harmful neither to ourselves nor to other people. It is called noble. Noble means harmless. Do not become stuck in doubt, in uncertainty. I can assure you that all kinds of sufferings, defilement, and unwholesomeness, are born out of our ignorance of the nature of body and mind, and strengthened by it. Once we have attained insight into body, feeling, mind, and mind objects, these four aspects, our lives should be liberated.
May all beings be at ease, whatever living beings there may be, whether they are weak or strong, omitting none, the great or the mighty, medium, short or small, the seen and the unseen, those living near and far away, those born and to be born. May all beings be at ease.